Okay, let's pour this beautiful paradise geode together. I'm mixing geode resin, 240 milliliters here in the jar, and I'm speeding up the entire video for you so you don't have to go with me throughout the entire process. I'm in the background showing you in the real time how I was doing that, and the video is actually showing you how the true video in the training is showing you how I was doing that and every step of the way. But in this shorter version, what I'm speeding up a little bit the process to not bore you for over an hour with my full pour, I'm gonna bring the most important tips and tricks that I used while pouring this amazing beautiful geode pour. So first of all, you need to be sure that your resin is appropriately mixed, right? And always use resin calculator and take into consideration the temperature in your room, because sometimes when during the summer is very hot, your pot time will be shorter. I'm using those paper cups that I already worked on in last project, and I'm mixing a little bit of glitter. It is white and silver glitter, and I'm just pouring around the DRUZY fine line. I'm gonna pour also in the puddles in between the DRUZY, those little lakes as I call them, and just making sure that I have enough resin to go from all of the sides of the DRUZY, right? Some inner side, outer side, but with glitter it doesn't really matter. You can mix a little bit more, as I'm doing here. I'm adding a little bit more glitter. It's like semi-transparent glitter with resin. It's not really very important step here, because most of the glitter is gonna disappear underneath the DRUZY anyway. I'm adding a little bit of my colored mint glass bits with resin, and I'm adding them on top of the DRUZY because I wanted to have a little bit of mint highlights, which are gonna match the crystals that I've used on this artwork. So because I made the decision yesterday, after the DRUZY was already cured, it was too late to add anything on top, and this is what I'm doing now before I continue pouring, so I don't have to stress later. And you always want to make sure that your bits are dipped with resin, so once the resin is cured, everything is gonna stay in place, right? And we are gonna continue pouring shortly. I'm just adding a tiny bit of transparent resin here and there because I attach a little bit of chips, very fine glass gravel yesterday as well. I'm just adding a tiny bit of transparent resin here and there with the bamboo stick, so everything is secured properly. And this is what you also want to do if you have resin leftovers. You just want to add some some resin on top of it to make sure that everything is properly in place. And now I'm adding champagne glitter from Colorberry, and it's fine and chunky. It's half fine, half chunky. I'm mixing it with transparent, and I'm pouring fine line around the DRUZY from all of the sides, right? And it doesn't have to be as intensive, as hard, let's say, as when you pour resin lines on top of the resin. When you pour in between the resin, you don't have to have very intensive glitter. You don't have the dough consistency. You don't need that. So as you can see, it's just probably around half glitter to resin, and I really don't like when it's too much glitter, so I haven't added too much of it. And now I'm adding more transparent, so I'm making it much more transparent. I'm still having glitter in my cup from the leftover, and I'm making it more transparent, so it's going from more opaque, more intense, to more transparent look. It's more diluted with transparent resin. And I'm going around all of the sides again, to make sure that everything is having matching style. And now I'm just taking away with the stick a little bit of the glitter because I didn't like how how opaque it was, how I didn't like the volume of the glitter. So I'm removing it with the bamboo stick, because at this point you can still do that. If you will decide to do it later, it's risky because you can start messing too much with the other lines of the resin that you poured. But at this stage I decided that it's too much of the gold resin and I wanted it to look like a beach, but I'm not a very huge glitter fan, let's say. So I wanted it to be very delicate and elegant, and I'm adding even more diluted glitter lines. So it's barely any glitter in there and more transparent. You can see on the pour, like there are just a couple of dots here and there with the glitter, and it's mostly transparent. And I'm pouring also within those little puddles. I'm just making sure that everywhere around the druzy everything is nicely covered before I introduce some color, and that is, thick enough and equally thick enough around all of the sides. And now I'm adding alcohol ink to the transparent resin. I'm mixing it thoroughly. I'm adding one more drop. Always go with one drop and build up the opacity. And I'm checking on the panel if I like the opacity. And now I decided to add one more, right? So always build up very slowly. I'm adding one drip to transparent of white crystal from Colorberry, white pigment paste, to make it not super intensively opaque white, because I wanted to have something very similar here to ocean wave. And of course I'm not creating ocean art, I'm creating geode art, so I'm not gonna blow. With bigger project I will probably go ahead and use blow dryer, heat gun. Actually I would blow white into the transparent, but because it's small canvas I didn't want to mess around too much. And the moment you start using heat gun, you actually make the resin super runny and a little bit unpredictable. I'm adding a little bit more white to the leftovers, and I'm pouring another line of white to make it even more intense and more opaque. So you're building up the opacity, and you can see that how fine lines I'm building up. Every line is super fine, and you watch it with 4 times speed. So I'm pouring actually slower than that, and always go with the flow of the center. I'm building more opaque white, so every time I have leftovers I'm adding more pigment to make it more intense. I was not having enough, so I'm mixing a little bit more. You just need to have enough to go around all of the sides, and here I have like 1, 2, 3, 5 sides almost, right? Because I have a little bit of druzy. So each time I have leftover I'm adding a little bit more pigment to build the opacity, and maybe it's not super visible now, but you will see it on the painting. You will definitely notice that. And now I was testing the blue on the panel if I'm happy with it, and I'm gonna start moving into blue because I want to have the water look. I didn't like how my nozzle was behaving. It was not too accurate, so I moved my resin into another cup with better nozzle. And this is what is really important for me when I'm pouring, the control over the resin. So I'm changing the cup again. I just needed much more fresh paper cup that I can squeeze as you can see. And you can see the shape of the lines I'm pouring. I'm not pouring straight lines. I'm always trying to go with the flow of the center and make them a little bit more intense. And I'm usually going in with the stick, making sure that the outsides are covered, and to do even some geode shaping with the sticks. And I'm adding a little bit more of the pigment, of the ink, into the cup, because I want to build the opacity. Sometimes one drop is enough, and I was checking if it's intense enough, and you can see the difference, right? It is more intense. So I started pouring again another line. Because this is how you build the interest, by building in the opacity. And as I mentioned, maybe on the pouring video it doesn't seem like a huge difference, but it is when you look at the artwork in real life. Now I'm adding the leftover of the white that I was having in the cup from my last line. I'm adding it a little bit to blue, and I'm making a new color which is more like milky. It's more opaque, right? Because it's not fully transparent anymore. It's more opaque, and it was added to the leftover from the previous line. Connecting the lines to make sure that everything is flowing nicely. It's always giving me a better feeling of the piece and what it's needing when I have the lines connected. I just feel the flow much better. And sometimes the resin is curing fast. If you leave some spaces, sometimes the resin is pushing and connecting, and sometimes it's not, and it needs a little bit of help. So I'm adding a little bit more white again to the leftovers. And I'm adding this fine line at the end. It's an amazing way to build up the interest in the piece, to build up the ombre effect, which I, by the way, really love in all of my pieces. I never pour like just regular one color thick lines and draw markers on top. I'm always building the opacity in my lives, and I teach a lot about that in the classes that I'm having. I'm adding specialty very iridescent white glitter. It was for nail art that I found, and it's just glitter and transparent, and it's not a lot of glitter because I wanted the glitter to flow freely in the transparent lines to create more 3D effect. And this is also what you need to remember. If you want to build up interest in the piece and 3D effect with resin, take advantage of the 3D effect, like properties of the resin. Remember to work with transparent and opaque lines and pigments in your piece. Just move between transparent and opaque, not only between the opacity and the intensity of the color, but also between the more transparent and more opaque lines. This is how you naturally build up the transparency and the 3D effect and interest in your piece, just in one first layer of resin. And then doing the line work with pens is gonna even help you with that more. And this is not something easily visible on the videos because the camera is not capturing properly the transparent and the opaque colors. Everything seems like the same. I was adding just a little bit of resin on the edges of DRUZY because they were just plain canvas. And now my resin is starting to be super jelly. As you can see when I'm applying, I'm adding just a splash, and really like it was just a tiny dot of white to create this milky foggy white. It's like half transparent white, if you may say so. And I'm adding new lines with it, and it's not spreading nicely anymore because it's super thick. It was like 30 degrees in this day when I was pouring. Even though I was pouring in the morning, it was very hot in the room. Always remember to adjust your pour time and technique and amount of resin, especially to how fast you can, to the temperature in the room and how fast you can work with it. And now I'm adding, because this is something cool that you can achieve when the resin is super thick already and jelly. I'm adding the glitter lines again, and they're staying in place because the resin is not moving. Okay, so I was out of the resin. I decided to mix a small batch of the resin, and now I'm busy with that. I've mixed maybe like 60 milliliters of extra new batch of resin, but I've used maybe only half of it, and the rest I'm just using for some additional projects that I can use later. But I will show you how I finish this piece properly, and it's something that can happen, and it's fine if it's happened that you cannot finish the piece completely. You can come back later or mix the resin right away. So as you can see, I'm torching the entire piece with the blowtorch, and I haven't used any heat gun or anything to actually remove the bubbles before that. And I've decided that I don't like some of the glitter around the DRUZY, and the resin was so thick that removing a little bit of glitter here and there wouldn't move it anymore. And I always go with very soft and elegant finish, so that was my call. I didn't like the volume of the glitter in some of the places, so I remove it with the bamboo stick. And now I'm gonna mix a little bit of white iridescent and white silver red glitter inside my transparent freshly mixed resin to actually complete the design on the inner side of this rainbow half circle place, because I didn't have enough resin to complete it in my leftover cup. So this is what I'm gonna do shortly, but I'm mixing first a little bit of blue, just one drop of the ink, and I was having already transparent with the glitter poured in this corner, so it was fine. But I'm now talking about not having transparent with glitter here in this little space, so I'm adding the transparent with glitter just before I move with the blue ink, to be sure that the design is matching with the other sides of the panel. And now I'm gonna add the blue, and it's much softer blue, just one drop of the ink, and I'm adding on all of the sides where the resin was still not finished and poured, just next to the line with transparent and glitter. Now I'm gonna pour the just transparent resin without any additions on all of the sides, and I'm gonna finish it again with transparent with a little bit of blue ink. And because I didn't like how separated the lines are, I didn't actually like the shape of those lines, I torched them a little bit, and I made the decision to blend them a little bit more with the stick. You will see it shortly. I just decided to merge them a little bit better, and I'm happy I did it, because after applying some line work with pens, it actually turned out to look amazing. It's a very transparent look on this finish. So when you actually introduce some lines, you make the design to look even more 3D. So that's it. Okay, it's finally time for a close-up. You can see how our pour looks like. Now it's gonna be time for me to wait one more day, do some line work with Posca pens, and finish the piece with top coat. And if you want to see how I'm doing every single step, how I'm preparing the panel, how I'm doing the druzy, attaching the crystals, how I'm doing the line work and the top coat, I'm gonna add a link to my classes for this specific painting, and you can join and have a full class on how to do everything from start to finish. But here we go. I'm gonna show you in a moment how the final product looks in outside in the daylight. So all of this sparkle will come up and shine. Now you can see the full result. So if you want to see more tutorials and if you want to see more tips and me showing you how I'm doing things, please make sure to subscribe and to like and share this post, because it's gonna give me the feedback that you want to see more and more, and I'm gonna show up here more and more often with more tips and tricks. Thank you for watching.